everyone. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Doing fine, thank you. Well, let me see. Justine is here, and 10-2. Raylan. Yeah, the only one that is absent is Joshua. Well, guys, for this week, let me explain our topics. Okay, this week we're going to get focused on creating our backends. Remember that I have been given some lessons about how to do a backend, how to use Express, Postgres, how to connect that back into our database that we created on AWS. Well, today I will reinforce that topic the entire week. It's going to be 2 weeks for coding backend and deploying those backends into EC2 instances. So it is very important that you need to do this assignment. You need to have your own RDS for this part of the week. I mean, from now on, if you don't have your RDS created, um, there will be a problem. I noticed that it is one that I mean, there's one instance that isn't in a different region that the other students have. Okay, so I leave that message in our chat. Let me show the message to you. Give me a sec. It's here. If you haven't read it, please, the owner of this database, try to recreate this database because it's in a different region. Remember that we need our databases in the region US East -1. Okay, so right now this is another region. I mean, it's not that this is a mistake or this is an error, but I will have access to the databases in the same dashboard if we are everybody using the same region. So every time that you are in AWS, try to use the region that I told you right now. Okay, and this is my recommendation for the owner of this database. I know that there is another database in the region of North Virginia that has the same name. So I don't know who's the owner of this one and the owner of that one. My recommendation is if there is a possibility that you can rename it, please let me know. If you don't know how to rename the database, I can help you. Well, let's start with the class. So in this week, guys, as you see, it's this one, Express Part 1. We will continue learning how to create a backend. So we will be coding in JavaScript, and we are going to be using the Express framework, where we're going to create a connection to Postgres, and there are some assignments. The first assignment here is that the first step, I mean, if you want to continue advancing in this new week, the first step is that you can deploy your own instance. So it is very important that you can put a name that is going to represent that that instance is yours. Please try to follow like in the same steps when you were creating the RDS. Remember to put the name of the student or the name of the owner of the instance. So there is this assignment where the objective is that you can create the EC2 instance. Then you're going to connect to the browse terminal. For last, you will install Node.js and GitHub. So the steps are in here. If you don't remember how to create the instance, I leave the video here for you. If you want to install Node.js in Git, there is a guide that I provide, a link for everyone. So if you want, you can read it. It is necessary to read the guide and copy paste some commands in the terminal. And once you have everything done, you need to take some screenshots about the EC2 creation, the git minus minus version, and the node minus v. Does this make sense about this activity? This activity is very important so if you want to continue advancing in the next weeks. Okay, so this will be your own server. Later, I will show you how to put a name to the server. For example, it's going to be Raylon dot, for example, a domain.com. I'm going to show how to do that in AWS. There is a service that is called Route 53. That is the one that is going to help us to create, to buy a domain and to create our own subdomains for our own projects. So you will know how to deploy a project with a subdomain. So let's start with the new topic. I mean, it's not a new topic, it's a reinforcement because in the past week, we have some examples of what is a backend and how to deploy a backend on AWS. So let's start. I have a presentation for you. It is here. So we're going to create a backend using Node.js, Express, and SQL. So we're going to understand what is a new URL to. It's very important. There are some Express methods that we're going to define, and we're going to use a SQL integration. Now, I don't know if you know this, but there's an important question that we need to understand. What is a backend? In software development, guys, the backend refers to the server-side logic. So it's going to contain the databases, the API, and that's what is going to give the power to the application. That part of the application is going to contain the logic of the business. So it's very important to identify that all the rules that you have in a business, you need to apply them in a backend. That way, the front end is going to inherit the business logic without coding that logic in the front end too. So it's crucial that that backend needs to have the business logic, and that backend can be consumed by several clients. So you can have a React, I mean, it's going to be a React uh, website, or maybe it could be a PHP website, or you can have um, a mobile app that is going to consume the backend that you're creating. So it's the same logic rule that you're going to be deploying to the world, or you're going to be um, publishing to the public, and you're going to have several clients. It could be a React website, or it could be a mobile web app too. Or I mean, it's going to be a mobile app in your iPhone or Android. So it's going to use the same backend. It's very important to understand that, for example, um, Facebook or Instagram, you know these apps, right? They need to have a backend and a front end. The front end is just consuming the backend, but that front end, it could be, you can have several front ends. It could be the website, or it could be the mobile app that you are using in your cell phone. So that's the idea, that the backend is going to rule between those two front ends. Does this make sense? We can have more than one front end. It's not only React and HTML. You can use a mobile app that could be a front end too. Or in this case, another front end could be Thunder Client or Postman, because we are consuming the backend using the URLs of the backend. So the backend is going to handle how to store the data, how to do the processing, and the communication with the front end. And it's very, I mean, super common that our backends are using JSON, but we can have different type of backend. There is a previous era about backend that they used a different language. It was called XML. It's commonly used on banks because I mean it's legacy code, and they are continue using this kind of backends too. They call them SOAP backend. The backend that we are learning right now is REST API backend. So there are two kinds of backends. Um, as I told you, the SOAP backend and the REST API backend. As web developers, I mean, as we are in the new technology, we are understanding that our backend is using JSON. So another part, or another case, I mean, in this case, it's not another example. This is like an explanation of how a backend works. So you have the front end here, okay? The the front end is going to create an HTTP request to the backend servers. You can have more than one backend server. You will learn that when you identify what is auto scaling groups and what is vertical and horizontal scale in AWS. I mean, this week I'm going to be publishing that in our Moodle, and you will know that you can have more than one backend server. So the backend server is going to have the business logic. It's going to connect to several databases if there is necessary, um, and at the same time can create connections to another backend too. So um, this is a diagram how the backend and the front end works. The front end is just HTML, JavaScript, and that front end is going to create a fetch operation, and it's going to consume, it's going to hit the backend. Okay, that's the way that it's going to communicate with the database. Remember that the backends are living in a server, in this case in an EC2 instance, and it's an interpreter between the front end and the database. So the backend is going to handle the communication between the database and the HTML. Now, as I told you previously, the backend handles the processing, the storage, and the logic. I mean, it could be that the backend is going to work in a server that is going to use Node.js and Express, and in a different server, we're going to have a database. The client is going to make an HTTP request, and the backend is going to respond. So the client always is going to send information in the request object, and is going to send, for example, the URL, some JSON data, and that JSON data needs to be manipulated in the business logic so you can save that information somewhere. Okay, that's the idea. The client is going to create that HTTP request. It's going to send some data, hitting a URL with some parameters there, and that information needs to be processed in our processing part in our backend. Now, here we have an example. I don't know if you have noticed this, but I mean, I have a user in Facebook and I have a user in Instagram. You know that the owner of Instagram and Facebook is Meta. So Mark Zuckerberg is the owner of the two apps. So he created a communication API between the two apps. So I don't know if you have noticed this, but if you want to log in using your Facebook account into Instagram, that's possible. Or maybe you want to share a picture that you have in Instagram, you can share it into Facebook. So that's possible because we are using APIs. We have the database of our Instagram project in one server and the database of our Facebook project in another server. But the way that those two servers can communicate is using an API. So they're going to send some information to one database and to another database. That's why we have this. In the backend servers, we can connect to several databases. In this case, if you are uploading an image into Facebook and then that image appears automatically into Instagram, is because the backend has created a communication into the two databases. Does this make sense? Everyone? Well, this is okay. Let's continue, and we're going to understand now how to read a URL, guys. This is very important for our. I mean, this is very important for our knowledge about backends, because how to read a URL is very important, guys. So let me explain you something. A URL is going to contain something that is called a protocol. It's this one. We have two types of protocols, the HTTP and the HTTPS. So if we have the HTTPS, it means that we have a protocol that is secure. So there is something that is called the encryptation. So when we have this kind of protocol, it's because we have encryptation in our server. But if you want to perform that, you might need to do some operations in that server. Right now, we're just using HTTP in our EC2 instance. Now, once we have our protocol identified in our URL, there is something else. There is something called the domain. And this is the domain. The domain is very similar to the API address. I mean the IP address, because the IP address is going to be masked by a domain name. For example, if you put in the browser google.com, in the background, you're trying to hit to an API, I mean to an app, to an IP address. So that's why we have something that is called the domain. And this is a domain, okay? Now, the third part about reading a URL is the port. So as you see, the port is going to require the column. And in this case, we are using the port 443 because we are using the HTTPS in this example. But this port is optional. If you are using the HTTPS, we know that we are using that port. And I mean, this is optional in this case. Now, once we identify the port, guys, there is something else that is called the path. In this case, the path is very similar to the route in our backend projects, because we are going to start creating routes for our tables. In this case, we are trying to hit the table of users, and then there is another parameter in the route. In this case, we're trying to hit the user with the ID number 5. Now, the last part of a URL are the query parameters. In the query parameters, we can add information that could be helping us to filter data. So for example, in this case, we're trying to get the user number 5, and we are adding a filter to identify if the user is active. If the user is not active, this is going to return an array that is going to be empty, or an object empty. Okay, but if the user is active, it's going to return just one user. So this is how we understand the URL, guys. Remember, let's recall this. We have the protocol, then we have the domain. Remember, the domain it's a mask for the IP of the server. Then we have a port. In this case, the port is optional. If you are deploying something in the port 80 or in the port 44.3, that this is the port for. Sorry, guys, I'm receiving a call. Sorry. This interrupted my presentation right now. Sorry. Let me put this in airplane mode. Now, the last part is that we have the path. Okay, and in the path, we are trying to get the information of the table of users, filtering the user with the ID number 5. This is the route. Okay, remember, it's very important that in the backend in Express, we have the possibility to create a route. And in the route, we can add parameters. So we can filter information of one user and so on. And then for the last part is that we have the query parameters, so we can add more filters to the user's tables. Now let's continue. This part is very important because we are going to do an example using the user's table. Now we're going to create our project. And this project is going to be an Express project. So my recommendation how to start creating your projects using Express and Node.js is that first you need to go to GitHub. And we're going to create a new repository here. In this case, for this example, I have an example of an agenda. Let me guide you here that, let's see. This is the example that I will be creating. It's going to be an agenda of persons and phones. So in this case, we're going to identify people, and that people is going to have phones. And we can have one person who owns more than one phone. And this is a phone number, okay? So that's possible in the real life. We can have more than one phone number. Could be the personal number or the business number. Okay, so that's possible. So we're going to create our own agenda. Okay, let's return. So in Express, we're going to create the project. We're going to create the project in GitHub and we're going to install Express to the project. So the way to start a project, my recommendation is that first you create the project in GitHub. Let me call this agenda. And let's see, we're going to leave this public. We're going to add a git nor file with the type of node. And then we're going to create the repository. Once you create the repository, you will copy the URL of the repo and we're going to open our terminal. Now, the way that I like to save my information in my computer is that in my documents, I created right now this folder that is called the Codex backend. So here I have the hospital backend and I will be downloading or cloning this new repository. So I will access to this folder. The way to do it in the terminal is that you need to access first to the my documents or to the document folder. So it will be cd documents. As you see, the path of my terminal is a new one. So I am inside of the documents folder. If I prompt the ls command, I will list the folders that I have in my path. As you see, are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 folders. I have the 6 folders here. Now, I need to clone the repository in this folder, Codex backends. So I can copy paste the folder. Remember, we're going to prompt cd, change directory, and I will enter to this new folder. Now I will prompt again ls, and as you see, this is the backend for the hospital project. So the way to clone the repository, the new one, is that you copy this URL, and in the terminal, you will prompt git clone, and then you paste the URL of the project. Does this make sense? Now you will see that in the folder, now I have 2 folders, the hospital the hospital backend and the agenda backend. So let me enter to the agenda backend, and I will open the backend with VS Code. I will prompt the command code with dot. And this is going to open my VS Code with the folder of the project. Does this make sense? If you have questions, let me know. You can put them in the chat. Now, I will initialize my repository. So this is the next step, npm init -y. So I will open the terminal in my VS Code, and I will prompt here npm init -y. This is going to create a file that is called the package.json. This is the one that has the metadata of our project. So this project, the type of this project is common.js. This is the ancient or the legacy code in Node.js. We're going to change it to module. And we're going to install a new dependency. In this case, is npm install express. This is the framework necessary to deploy a backend using Node.js. So let me install it, npm install express. And you will see something here, guys. A folder that is called node module is going to be added to the project, and into the package.json in the dependency section. Now we have a new dependency. It's a new library that is called express. So let me add a new file that is going to contain the logic of the project, and this is going to be called, or this is going to be the index.js file. This is going to be the principal file of the project. Okay. Now, this will be a very simple backend right now. Let me explain you that if you want to deploy a backend, first you need to import from that library that we installed at Express here the object into the project from the library Express. Once we have done this part, then we need to create a new object. that is going to be called app, and it's going to contain all the content of Express. Now, it's very important to understand that we need to know the port that we're going to deploy the app. So let me create a port right now. And this is going to be equal to the port 3000. Now, to deploy this, you need to enable the JSON communication. So if you want to enable it, you are going to use the function or the method that is called use, because we are going to add a middleware for for JSON communication. And we're going to set up this express.json. This is going to enable the JSON communication. Does this make sense? Let me know if there are some questions, guys. Don't be afraid of it. Now, we're going to deploy the project. Now, can we use any port number? That's a good question, Raylan. There are some ports that are busy in our computers. For example, the port 80 is not possible because that's a port for the internet. If you have, for example, in your computer, install a project like Postgres, this is going to be using the port 5243. So that port's busy for that server. So it could not be any port, but you can use any free port in your computer. That's and for example, the port 3000, it's a free port. I know that there is no app that is using this port, and there are some ports that right now Google Chrome is trying to disable for communications, because Google Chrome has identified that, for example, the port 5000 is not secure, so maybe that port is not going to be deployed in the browser. So my recommendation: try to use ports between 3000 and 4000. You will know that you have an availability of 2000 ports there, and those are available ports for a project. So my recommendation: between 3000 and 4000. So let's deploy this project in the port 3000 right now. So we need to use the method that is called listen. And we're going to pass the port, and then there is a callback. Express has this property that for every middleware that we are applying, we can use a callback to call it once we finish um, deploying the port in this case. So we're going to call right now a function that is going to console log in our terminal, listening in port, and we're going to grab the port from our variable that we have it here. So this is on a small backend, guys. Right now, I do not have any connection, but the port, the backend is going to be deployed in this port right now. Now, the way to run this project in Node.js is that you're going to use the command node, then index.js. And this will be deploying the server in the port 3000. Now, if you want to stop the server, and you might need to put in the keyboard. You might need to press in your keyboard Control C. It's like copy pasting Control C, right? And this is going to stop the server. Now, another command that I will recommend you today is that there is the possibility in Node.js. There is a parameter that is called watch. In this case, this parameter is going to be listening the changes that I have in my code. So if I am modifying the content of the code, this is going to listen that modification and redeploy the backend. So I will do it this way because I will be coding right now. This is commonly used if you are developing, okay? So as you see, I am listening in the port 3000, and if I create a modification, you will see that something is going to be, I will receive a message here about the modification. You will see it. Now, let's continue with the um, example that I have here. Now, for every backend, there are four important methods. We have the method that is called get, and this method is important if you want to read data from the tables. The method that is called post, it's the one that is going to help you to create data inside of the tables. So we can use the app.get, app.post. Um, the put method is going to help you to update data, and that data is going to be modified inside of the table. And the this patch method and update, they are equivalent. So I will remove this because this is a little bit more advanced. Sorry. I mean, patch and update are similar, guys, but it's an advanced method. So let me remove it. Let's continue with the last method. In this case, the last method is the delete method. With this one, we can remove data. And the way to enable the method is that we're going to use this syntax, okay? So, okay, imagine that you want to create the backend for a table. Remember the example that I told you is that we're going to create an app that is going to have the definition of the person, and we're going to have control of how many phones that person is owning, okay? So let's start creating the tables. This is the first step always. So I have my tables in my database connections. Remember that I told you that it's possible that you can have an schema. And a schema, guys, is going to help you to group tables for a project. In this case, I will not like to have my tables in the hospital assignment or in the public schema. So I will create a new schema, and this is going to be called agenda. Okay, so I need to create the schema by clicking this plus sign, and this will create a new SQL instruction where the instruction is going to put these two commands, create a schema. Now you need to assign the name of the schema. Okay, so this creates a new schema. Remember, a schema is a namespace so you can group your tables. So I will create right now a new query. So the way to create a new query is that you click this like blank document that you have here, and this is going to create a connection to the schema right now. So I will create the table. Let me show it. Okay, let me add some soon. Okay, create table. In this case is the table of persons. So I have the person ID. Remember, this is a primary key, right? So the person ID is going to, we're going to set up that this is going to be an auto increment integer with the serial data type. And we're going to assign that this will be the primary key. Now we're going to add the name. This could be a text data type, not null. Then we can add a birth date. And the data type is going to be a date. And the last is the gender. And here we can set up here that this is going to be a varchar with the length of 1, and we're going to add a constraint check. So the only two values allowed here in this column will be F and M. Now let me create the table. I have duplication here, create. Now the table has been created. Now if I look again inside of my database, you will see now I have the table of persons here. If I click it, I can retrieve the data to the terminal. Does this make sense? Now, let's create the other table. Okay, so we're going to add the phone ID. Again, this is going to be an integer, auto incremented, so it will be a serial data type. And we're going to set up that this will be the primary key. Then we have the phone and the person ID that this is the owner. Remember, a phone, guys, is not a number, it's not a numeric value, because and remember that in a phone, you can save something like this, +1. I mean, something like this. You can say this kind of phones, right? So this is a data type that is going to be a text or a numeric, or it could be a varchar. We're going to leave it as varchar with a length of 50 characters. And then we have the person ID. This is the owner of the phone number. Okay, remember this is a foreign key for this person ID. So we're going to set up the data type will be an integer, and we're going to add the references to the table of persons with the column ID person, or person ID, sorry. Now I run the command and I have the table of phones. Okay, does this make sense? Let me know if you have questions. Okay, now we need to start creating the methods: get, post, put, and delete. And we're going to be using these methods. So I will use the first one. This is the first example, how to get data from the table. So in the code that I have in the index file, I can create a new method, app.get. This is the method get. Remember, the method get is the one that is going to retrieve data from the database. This is a convention, guys. I'm not inventing this. The first parameter of this get method is that you're going to set up the route that is going to be opened to the world or to the internet. So the first command is the route. In this case, I'm going to add the route. Let me show it. API slash person. In this case, I'm trying to identify that I'm trying to hit the table of persons. Now, the second parameter for the method get is going to be a callback. In this callback, we're going to set up the way that is going to behave our backend. So we need to understand that this is the functionality of the backend, this part. So right now, I'm just going to return. Okay, there are two parameters that we're going to receive here in our callback, and it will be the request and the response. I will explain what is the request and the response later. Now, with the response object that we are receiving, that is this one, the second parameter, we can communicate data to the client. So right now we're going to use this object, turn JSON.json, I mean rest.json, and we can pass here information in the format, I mean in the JSON notation. Okay, it could be a message, get method right now. I won't create a connection right now to the database, but we're going to try this. Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but my terminal is restarting my index file because I am modifying the file. So this is possible because I am using the --watch parameter the way that I'm deploying the backend, okay? So if you want to reach this endpoint, you might need to use, in this case, the Thunder client request. So this is an API request that I will be creating. And you need to understand the URL that we are going to be hitting. In this case, the protocol is going to be HTTP because we don't have a certification installed in my computer, and we don't have a domain to my computer, but I have an IP to my computer. So the IP of my computer, it's equivalent to something that is called the local host. So if I am trying to access to the local host right now, this is accessing to my IP, or in this case, to the IP of the computer that you are logged in. Now, the project is served in the port 3000, or it's listening in this port. And the route that I created in this case, as you see, the part of the route are these ones. So as you see, it's the path, it's the route. Right now, the only route that I have is the route API person. So let's see, in the request, in the URL, I will put the API person route, and the method that I will be trying to hit is going to be the get method, because that's the only one that I have in my backend. As you see, let me show it. This is the only method that I have set it up right now. So once I hit the URL, guys, I am returning this JSON object, message get method. Does this make sense? Now,
Yes.
the important here, thank you, Raylan. The importance here is that we're not going to return dummy data. We need to return information from our database. So how can we create the connection with the database? Let's continue with the presentation. Okay, let's see. Okay, so if you want to create a connection to the database, there is a package important that is called PG. Okay, so let's stop the server and let's install this package. npm install PG. This is the one that is going to help us to communicate with the database. So let me show something here. My package JSON has a new dependency. So as you see, it's the PG file. It's the PG library. And if you want to connect to the database, another package that is going to be important is the .env file. The .env, this is going to help you to create environment variables. npm install .env. Okay, so I will create my secrets here. Remember, this kind of secrets, you don't want to share this with anyone. So once I create the variables, I will set up the information for the communication, but I will stop presenting, okay? Because I might need to put some information that it's going to be vulnerable that I want to share with anyone. For example, the password, I will stop presenting when I'm putting the password, but I'm going to put some other information that is not so vulnerable right now. So this is the .env file, okay? So my recommendation, remember, here you need to set up the port, the DB port. Then you need to set up the DB host, the DB user, and the DB password. This is the most vulnerable part of the communication. If someone has the password of your database, that's giving the key of your house to anyone. Okay, so now how can I put this information here? You have this information in the connection that you created here. So if you wanna, you can try to edit this. I think it's possible that you can edit, edit the connection. And here you have the host, so you can copy paste the host from here. You have the port. In this case, this is the port. The user, I remember, is Postgres for me in my case. Now the password, I will stop presenting, and this is going to be the last time that I will show you my .env file. Okay, so let me start presenting right now because I will put the password. You need to be very jealous with this information, guys. Okay, so I have my .env file. Let me continue presenting. Now I have the .env file, and I will try to create the connection to the database. So my recommendation is that you might need to create a new module for this communication, and this will be created in a new folder that is going to be called DB. And inside of the DB folder, you will create the connection.js. Here, the code necessary is this one. I mean, you don't need to do something so, I mean, this is very common. First, you import the pool from the PG. Oh, but this is not the way we are using the import pool from PG. This is the correct way. And this variable, the pool, is going to be exportable. So we need to add the export prefix here. Now, first, you need to set up the configurations here. So this is an object. And in this object is going to receive the database. This object is going to receive the port. This object will receive the host and the password. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Now there is another object that is the SSL. And this is, we're going to enable. Give me a second, I don't remember. Think here. This is the way to set it up. Okay, now, if you want to access to the variables that I have in my .env file, first you need to import the .env package. And this is from the installation of the new library. Then when we install, I mean, when we import that library to our connection, then we need to enable the configuration. So we need to access to the method.config. Now, once we have done these two lines of code, we can have access to the .env file. So we need to access to the process.env dot the name of the variable. In this case was a DB. Oh, the database is not necessary. This is not necessary. But the port it is. So it's process.env.db port process.env.db host. And I think the password right now, process.env.db pass. And there isn't a last parameter necessary for the connection is the user. Process.env.db user. Does this make sense? I'm grabbing the information from my .env file. Okay, now Once I have the connection here, remember this object it can be exported from another function. So what I can do is that in my index file, I can import this connection object that is called pool. Okay, so I'm bringing the pool of connection from the connection file, and instead of returning this, what I will do is that I will create a variable that is going to contain the SQL definition from grabbing data from the table. Remember, the SQL definition is select all from the table. And it's very important to put first the name of the schema. Remember, the name of the new schema is this one, okay? Now the table is person. So this is the query that we are going to be running. Now we need to run this query, and this will be run in a new variable that is going to be the result variable. This result variable is going to call the pool dot query, and here you're going to pass the SQL command. This instruction is going to run the command, and that information is going to be retrieved into an array, and will be saved here in the result. Now we're going to return the result right now. Now let's try to run the project. Okay, let's try to hit the person's table. So as you see, this is empty. Okay, let's see what's going on here. Client password must be a string. I think the name of the variable that I set up here is wrong. So let's try it with password. Let's try to do it again. Okay, now I'm not receiving any error. So the correct variable was db password. Okay, so as you see right now, this is empty. I'm going to add some table information. So let me get the data, and I will create a new record here. This is going to be auto-generated. The person that I will create will be Batman. His birth date will be 2015. No, 2000. And the gender, his gender will be a male. So let me save this information. Now, if I hit this again, send, do you see that I'm returning something that is null? I mean, the object that I'm returning is empty. Now, let me explain you why this is empty. Every time that you are hitting a database, this is an asynchronous operation. So this is returning a promise. So if we want to wait that the promise is finished, we need to add the await prefix here. And we need to set up that our callback is an asynchronous operation. So let's try to hit again. Now, as you see, I have like the information of the query. As you see, I'm running a command select, and the data is inside of this array or this object that is called the rows. So I won't return all this information. What I will be returning right now is the result.rows. Let's see, rows, yeah. Now let's try to hit again this URL. And now you see, guys, that I am returning in the response a JSON object. In this case, it's an array that is containing just one JSON object because there's one record in the table. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Okay, great. Now, I will create a new command in this case or I mean, it's not a new command, it will be a new method. And this new method is going to be the post method. Remember, get method is commonly used for getting, selecting data from the database. Now the post method is going to perform an insert command in the database. So in this case, again, the endpoint or the route that I'm creating is API person, and the SQL command will be different. It will be insert into the table. This is the table. Now we need to set up the columns that I will be affecting. In this case will be the name, the birth date, and the gender. The values are going to be 3 parameters. Parameter 1, parameter 2, and parameter 3. Now, this parameter is going to be replaced by the real information that I will be passing using Thunder Client. Okay, so let me clone this request here. Where is the request? This one. Let me put a name to this request. Get person. Okay, so let me add a new request by duplicating this one. And the name will be rename it as post person. Okay, so what is important here is that we're going to change the method post instead of using the get method. And in the body, I will be passing some JSON data. So here you need to set up what's going to be the information that you're going to be sending to the backend. My recommendation, always try to use the same columns with the same properties. So for example, the table of person contains the name, the birth date, and the gender. So try to set up that always your backend is going to receive the same properties, okay? So let's try this name. So I will create a new person. The birth date. Uh, 15, June 15, 2000. And the gender is a male. So that information that I'm passing here, this one, this JSON information is received in something that is called a request. So the request is an object. I will console log this object for you. And I will return right now from the request dot body right now. But instead of creating the SQL instruction here, let's console log the request. You will see that this is a huge object, guys, and it's very important. Let me see. Let me try to post this. As you see, I am returning the same information that I am passing, okay? But if we go to the console here, let's read what's all the information that we are passing in our request. And as you see, it's a huge object. Let's start with the first properties. Let's see. So the request object contains this kind of information. For example, the event, if there are some errors, data, if the request has been aborted. This symbol that we have here contains something about the token for the authentications. What else? Something very important here, that there is an object that is called the body. Let me see if it is possible that I can identify the body here. Let me see. Let me see. Let me look it. Let's continue. Continue. As you see, you have many properties in this object. Oh, okay. For example, here, the raw headers, for example, we are using Thunder client as the client that is trying to hit the URL. Um, the local host, this is the IP that we are trying to hit right now. As you see, we have the method here, the post method. The URL is API person, you see it? And there is something else we can find here. The body. The body is very important. But let's continue looking for this body. We have too many properties. Too much data. Okay, the regional URL, as you see, is API person. Okay, so here we have the body, guys. So in the body, we are passing this object, Superman, birth date, and gender. You see it? Okay, so this is the information that we are passing using this input that we have here, the JSON content, and we are returning this same body, okay? This is just something dummy right now, but now we're going to try to insert this object in the database. So let's go again to the index. And in the index, we're going to perform the query. So it's very important that we need to grab that body information. So I will create right now a variable with that we are going to call body, and this is going to be equal to the request.body. Okay. Now we need an array of parameters. As I told you, we need to replace these parameters with the real data. So we need to create a parameter array. And the content of this parameter will be the information of the columns. Okay, so it will be body dot name in the first position, body dot, let's see, birth date, and body dot gender. Now we have the parameters here. Okay, so this needs to be an asynchronous operation. Sorry, and the SQL query that I have here now is going to receive the parameter here with the real data. We are going to do a replacement of those parameters that I have here by the content of this array. Now, we're not going to console log the request, but we have the result. And this result is going to contain information about the operation that we are trying to perform. So my recommendation is that for every post operation, you might need to return a message like this one, object created. Now let's try to hit this URL with this JSON data. The message that I'm receiving is object created. Let's go for the table of persons. Let's try to read this again. Let's see. Oh, I was trying. No, I was trying to read the table. Oh well, I can read it here. So if I hit run, now I have two objects, Batman and Superman. So if we hit here, get persons, now I have two elements in the array. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Okay, great. Now, okay, this is how we connect to Postgres, okay? This is how we create the connection to the database. Now, something very important here that I don't know if you have noticed here, but we have just two methods for one table, and we have right now 30 line of code. If we continue coding in this index file, the index file is going to be unhandy. It's going to be very difficult to manage the content of this index file. So we're going to do something that is a refactoring. We will refactor this code, and we're going to add two new concepts. The first concept is the controllers. The controllers will perform the functionality that we have here in the callback. And the other concept that we're going to introduce here is going to be the route. The route is going to perform the creation of these endpoints. Okay, does this make sense? The creation of the endpoint will be created in the route folder, and the definition of the functionality will be created in the controller folder. So let's start with the controllers right now. We're going to add a controller that is going to be called person controller.js. And here we need to call the DB query, the DB connection. So we are going to remove from our index this importation that we have here. Let's remove it and let's bring this to our controller. So let's import the pool from the DB connection. Now, we're going to create a variable that is going to be called post or get person. This will contain the callback that I have here, the content of the entire callback. So we can cut this code that I have here because this is an arrow function, okay? Now this function needs to be exportable. So we're going to add the prefix export here. And we're going to have another function that is going to perform the post operation. So we can call this post person. Okay, so we have two functions right now. Now let's go to the route folder. And in this route, we're going to create the person route.js. In this file, we need to identify something new. So there is this slide that I have here, is that there is something that we're going to be putting into a file. We have the app.use and the router. We're going to create routers here inside of these new routes files. And this is going to help us to create modular routes. So we are going to avoid using the app.get, app.post, app.patch, and all the other methods that we can add to an app. And instead of using those methods, we are going to call the route using the app.use, because from now on it's going to be like a middleware. Okay, so let's return to our code, and here we're going to import the express object from the library express. Now I'm going to create a variable that is going to be named as the name of the table too, person, and this will be equal to express.router, because it's going to be converted to a router. And a router, guys, is a mini app. It's like the same stuff. So to this mini app, we can add the method post and the method get. So this is going to be an exportable variable too. So let's add the method get person.get. And here we need to set up the route. The route will be the route person right now, just a route person. And we need to import from the controller the functions. So the first function that we will be importing will be the get person function. And this is going to be the callback, okay? So we have the person route and the get person function here. Now we're going to import the post person, and now we're going to set up the method person dot post. Again, the route will be the same one, person. Now the function that is going to perform this route in this method will be the post person function. Now let's go to the index. And in the index, we're going to import these routes. Person from person.route.js. Now, we're going to set up the method use, app.use. In this case, we need to put the prefix API, because remember, we need to put something like the route here. And once we enter here, we're going to access to the person route. Okay, does this make sense?
Yes.
Okay, now let's see if this continue working. So let's try to hit the get method for the persons, and it's still working. Let me send some information. She's a female. Object created. I have 3 persons in my database. 3 people. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Great, guys. Okay, so we're going to have a break of 10 minutes. And then once we return, we are going to deploy this backend in my EC2 instance. So let me enable a timer here. You can grab some water if you want right now, and see you in 10 minutes. Okay, let's resume the class. And let's continue coding the last part of the backend that we are creating right now. So there are 2 more methods that we need to finish, we need to accomplish right now. Right now we have the get method, the post person. Now we're going to perform 2 more methods, and these are the delete method. So this will be delete person, and the message will be object removed. And instead of performing this kind of instruction, we're going to perform a delete from where the ID person is going to be equal to the parameter 1. Okay, now let me show you something different right now. Let me, the body is not necessary in this method, so we're going to remove this. And let me comment this part, and I will explain you something about the route. In the route, every time that you are performing a deletion operation and an update operation, you need to pass the ID of the element that you want to remove or update from the database. If you don't pass the ID of the element, that could remove the entire database or the entire table, or we can update the entire table. So we need to pass that mandatory, that ID needs to be a mandatory ID. So we need to pass this ID here in the route. The way to pass the ID in the route is that we're going to add a column here, and we're going to put the name of the parameter. In this case will be ID person. I think it's person ID or ID person. It's person ID, sorry. So it will be the parameter person ID. The method will be the delete method. Okay. Right now I will remove this function because it's not the post person, but we're going to import that delete person method. Okay. Delete person. So we're going to perform this function. And right now this function, I will show you something. Again, I will console log the body, the request.body. I mean the request, the entire request. And there is another property inside of the request that is called the params. You will see console log request.params. Okay, so there are two objects that I will be console logging right now. The request, and this is part of the request, request.param. And you will see that this is very similar to the body element that we grab from the request to. So let's try to hit the method, the new method. Let me show it. Get person. Let's duplicate this. Now we're going to rename this delete person. And as I told you, the parameter of the ID element that we're going to remove, it's mandatory. So we need to pass these parameter here as part of the route too. So in this case, we're going to remove the element number 3. Let me show that the element number 3 is this one, Wonder Woman. So, well, in this case right now, it's not going to perform the deletion right now. Let's rename this. Okay. But in the body, we can not, I mean, the body is not necessary to be passed. Okay, let me hit this. Right now, I'm just console logging something that says, I'm just returning to the person or to the client object remove it, right? But I have two uh, console logs here. So as you see, this is the entire request, right? As you see, it's a long object. But we have the params here, and as you see, inside of the parameters, this is an object, as the body is part of the parameters, of part of the request. And the content of this parameter object is just the person ID, that is the one that we set up here, the person ID, and the value that we are passing here. So it was this one. As you see, the, the value is the value number 3. So let's try to modify something. Instead of calling this person ID, we're going to call the parameter another way, just so you can see the example. I will call it ID, and the ID or the element that I want to remove will be the element number 10. If I hit send here, now you see that the params object, it contains the ID and the value 10. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so uh, let's call this, let's use the convention of using the same columns. Okay, so it will be person ID, the same parameter. Person ID, we are passing the element that we want to remove in this case. And in the delete method, in the params, you know that you have the parameter person ID from now on, okay? So this is going to be inside of a new variable. Will be equal to this instruction. Okay, now once we have the ID, we can create the array of parameters. In this case, we are just going to pass one element. It will be the person ID variable that we have in line number 24. And then we can create the result. So we are deleting a record with the ID that we're going to pass in the parameters. Okay, so let's try to perform this operation. And we have an error. Let's see. Column ID person is, yeah, I have a problem here in the SQL command. It's not person ID. It's not ID person, it's person ID. Sorry, my mistake. Now I will try to delete the record. The object has been removed. As you know, we don't have an element with the ID number 10, so this is not removing any element inside of the database. But if we pass the ID number 3, now you will see that Wonder Woman will be removed from the table. If I hit here again send, I just has Batman and Superman. Okay, now let's go and let's try to perform the operation of the put operation. This is equivalent to an update. So let's grab the method here, put, and it's very important that we need to pass again the parameter. Now we need to remove this delete person because it's not the function that we want to perform here. But we're going to copy paste this one. And let's rename this as put person. And instead of performing a deletion, we're going to update. Now, the where parameter or the person ID will be the last parameter, okay? So in this case, now we need to set the variables or the columns that we're going to be updating. It could be the name with the parameter number 1. Now the next column could be the birth date with the parameter number 2. And then we have the, what's the last one? The gender with the parameter number 3. And the parameter number 4 will be the person ID. Okay, now this information needs to be passed in the JSON object inside of the body. Okay, so we are going to grab a new object here that will be called the body. This is going to be equal to request.body. Now, in the parameters, we're going to pass the body dot name, body dot birth date, and body dot gender. And the last parameter will be the person ID. Object updated. This will be the message. Now something is wrong here. Let's see. Oh, I'm missing to import the method here. So the method will be the put person method. And this will be the callback for this route. Now let's try to hit this method, guys. Let me duplicate this method. This will be called put person. Okay. And now here we need to pass the body. Okay, so it will be the name. In this case, I will call this new element will be called flash. The birth date will be a new birth date, 19 November 1990, and the gender will continue as a male. Now let's, as you see, I need to change this to the put method. This is the one that is helping us with the update in the database. So let's hit this. The object has been updated. If we get the persons now, you will see the person ID. Oh, the person ID number 3 is not existing, so this is updating anything. So let's do to the person ID number 2. If I get again the people, you will see that the person ID number 2 is flash. Oh, my mistake with the birth date. It's birth date. Okay, now let me get the people again. This is the birth date, the gender. You see it?
Yeah.
Great, excellent. Now, this is like a common CRUD, okay? A common CRUD is containing, let me explain you something. Let me hide this CRUD. Okay, this represents the word creating or create, read, update, and delete. These are like the most famous methods that we can use in a backend. If you want to manage a table, I mean, Super common, guys. Super common that we can use the four methods to create an entire project. I mean, you can use more methods. I know that's possible, but these four methods can solve like the 80% of the projects in the world. So let's continue. Now, I haven't finished my backend. There is one table that is missing in my backend, and the table that is missing is the table of phones. Let me show you the tables again. I have the phones table. So let me create the controller and the routes for the phone. So let's return to the code and let's add here phone controller.js. Okay, so you can copy some content here. It's not a problem. Let me copy the post method here, but in this case will be post phone. I mean, this is the get phone, and instead get from agenda.person will be agenda.phones. I think it's phones. Give me a second. Yeah, phones in plural. So this is returning all the phones. Now let's try to create a new phone. It will be this method. You can copy paste the information that I have here. It's not a problem, but we need to modify the query that we're going to perform. In this case, we're going to insert into the agenda.phones, and remember to set up here the columns. In this case, I remember it was the phone number and the description, right? No, the ID person. I don't remember. Let's see. It's just the phone number and the person ID. And we need to pass just two parameters here. Now, in the requested body, we're going to receive the phone number and the person ID. So as you see here, I'm just changing the columns necessary to modify the table. Does this make sense? Well, in this case will be post phone, get phone, post phone. Okay, now let's go to the delete person. We're going to copy this one, and this will be renamed as delete phone. Now we're going to remove the phone from in this case will be the phone ID. Put the parameter number 1. Now I will rename this, instead of the person ID will be the phone ID. And the object is going to be removed, okay? Now this is the deletion for the phone. Now let's try to do the update for the phone. Let's copy the entire function. Let's paste it here. And here we're going to rename the function as put phone. In this case, the only thing that we can update here is going to be the phone number. With the parameter 1, or the person ID 2, with the parameter 2, and in this case will be the phone ID, the third parameter. Remember, this ID is received in the URL. So here we combine the params and the body, okay? So here will be the phone ID. Okay, if you don't know how to grab more than one element at the same time, is that okay? We're going to select the person ID, then with Control D, you can select several repetitions of the variable that you want to modify. Okay, so in this case will be the phone ID. Now let's try to, from the body, we're going to grab the I don't remember the phone number, and then we're going to grab the person ID, and these will be the 3 parameters, and this will perform the operation of updating the table. Does this make sense? put phone.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
let's go. Let's go. As you see, it's very, I mean, it's something that you can copy paste from another controller. Is very similar, guys. The only thing that is changing is the column of the table and the table that you're trying to hit. Okay. Now let's go to the routes, and in the routes we can add a new route. Uh, phone route. .js. And again, you can copy paste the entire route that you have here, no problem. Let's see. The only thing that is going to be changing will be the endpoints here, or the routes, and the functions that you will be importing. So yeah, okay, let's see. Let's copy the importation of the express, and the const will be renamed as phones, or phone, yeah, in this case. Um, Now, in this case, you can set up the methods, okay? Oh, let's import the methods. Import get phone from the phone controller.js. And we're going to import the delete phone. As you see, if you press in your, I mean, if you use that, these are completion that I have here, you can enable it, you pressing Control and a space bar. And this is going to bring some suggestions about the methods that you have available to be exported in that controller. Now I'm going to select the post phone, and again, control spacebar for the put phone. Okay, now let's continue, and we're going to set up the route, the entire route. So let's modify this. In this case, won't be the person, will be the phone, right? The endpoint is going to be renamed as, oh, let's see, uh, phone, just like this. And here it will be the phone ID. Okay, now I need to set up the functions. Get phone, delete phone, post phone, and put phone. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's go to the index. And in the index, we're going to import the route of phone from the controller. I mean, in this case, the route phone.js. Now let's use the API prefix and the phone route. Now, if I go to my Thunder client, let me duplicate this one, post person, let me duplicate this one, and this will be the post, it will be renamed as post phone. And let me reduce the zoom here. I will try to hit the URL phone. And remember, we need to put the phone number. And we need to pass the person ID. So we know that we have two elements, right? We have the element one that is representing Batman, and number two is Flash. So the person ID will be the person ID number one, and this is going to be an invented number phone number. I mean, this is an invented phone number. Okay, let's see, and um, let me hit this post method. The object has been created. Now let's see if we can get the phones. We are going to duplicate this one. Now this will be named as get phones. Now you will see something important here. Oh, I duplicate this one. Get person. Let me rename this as get phone. Now this will be the endpoint phones, or phone, sorry. And if I get the phones, I mean, I duplicate the phone. I mean, it's my mistake because I hit send twice. But I can update this one using the put mode, the put phone. Let's see. Uh, Let me duplicate the put phone. I mean, the put person will be duplicated right now. Now let me rename this as put phone. In this case, will be the method put. The endpoint will be phone. The element that I will update will be the ID phone number 2. In the body, I'm going to pass a new number. Okay, and the person ID will be the person ID number 2. If I hit send, oh, something is wrong here. Let's see. Okay, does not exist what? What is not existing? Let's see. Phone ID is not existing. Okay, let's see the name. I mean, the name of the column in the table, guys. It's phone ID. Phone ID does not exist. Let me see the query. Phone controller. Oh, I see. I didn't update the name of the table, guys. Here is phone. So I have 2 mistakes in my query. Okay, now let's okay, let's okay, another mistake is phones. Yeah, my mistake. Object updated. If I get the phones, now, as you see, the person ID is the number 1. Now, it's very important to understand that here we don't understand what's the person ID number 2 or number 1, right? We might need to get the name of that person. That's why the join is important. That's why we use 2 weeks to understand what is a join. So I will modify this get phones query. We have this operation here, phone controller. So instead of bringing all the elements of the phones, we need to understand the name of the person. So let me grab the query and let me go to my database definition, just right here. And let's see, I will create a new query here. Oh, I have the query here. So let's create an inner join. So this will require an inner join with the table of persons on a dot person ID it's equal to b dot person ID. Now, in the columns, we're going to bring from the phones, we're going to bring the person ID. Well, no, the phone ID first, then the person ID. From B, we're going to bring the name, and we can rename this as person name. And from A, the last part is the phone number. That's why the joins are important, guys. Joins are very important in the get methods. As you see, this will be the new query. This will be the new report. So we can copy paste this query, guys, and put it inside of the method. You will see it. Now we can prettify this a little bit more, like here. And let's try it again, the get phones. Okay, relation does not exist person. Okay, I see the problem. Give me a second. And the problem was that I didn't put the prefix that is the name of the schema. So the name of the schema that is missing is here. So let me save it and let's try it again. Now, as you see, then the owner, now we have the name of the owner, Flash. You see it? I think it's
Yes.
better to read. I mean, it's easier to read. I mean, we don't need to remember the ID of Flash from now on because we have the query that help us to identify who's the owner of that ID. Now, let's try with the last method. The last method, it's the deletion. So let me create a new one because I don't want to well, I can remove it. So it will be in this case, delete person. Let me rename this one. Let me duplicate this one as, let me rename it. In this case will be delete phone. Now we know delete phone. Let me select the method delete here, phone. We know the ID number 2 is the one that is for Flash. We can remove the JSON content, it's not necessary. If we hit send here, the object has been removed. If we get the phones, there is only one phone. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So let me commit this code. First commit. Now the changes are here in my GitHub account. Now I want to share this repository with you guys because this could be a guide for the assignment that I have prepared for you. Let me put in the chat the URL of the repository. I leave it there. If you want, you can access to it. You can open it here in GitHub, or you can clone it in your computers, no problem. But we need to continue with the next part of the class. Now we understand what is a backend. So, and I have created an example that could works if you want to create an app for saving the contacts of someone, okay? And this was the example that we accomplished today. The persons with the phones, okay? I have a mistake here, but you understand that it's a person ID, right? It's not a problem. Now, I have an activity for you. We're going to create a backend for a company that wants to track the task that the employees are performing. So imagine that you're an owner of a company, in this case, a coding company, and you are assigning some task to Justine, to JL, to Frey, and I would like to know which is the task that Justine is working right now. So we need to create a table of employees and a table of tasks. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's going to be a relationship one to many. One employee can perform several tasks, but that task is going to be performed just by one employee, okay? It's not a relationship many to many. I mean, it doesn't mean that it's not possible because if you are working in pairs or you have a group of developers working in the same assignments, it could be possible. But in this scenario, it's a relationship one to many, okay? And what we need to do here is that you're going to add the get, the post, the put, and the delete method to the two tables. This activity is mandatory right now. I'm not grading this activity because I want you to practice this. But for the assignment number 2 of this week, it will be necessary that you have this backend in your account because you will be deploying this backend in your EC2 instance. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I won't be grading it, but it will be necessary for the assignment number 2. The assignment number 2 is going to request that you can deploy this backend in AWS. The assignment number 1 right now, if you read the definition of the assignment number 1, is that you can deploy the EC2 instance. And if you don't remember how to deploy it, here I have the class recorded, so you can guide if it's necessary. And then you need to install Node.js. I have a guide instruction here for you. if you don't remember how to install Node.js. But I performed this installation in the video. So if you watch the video, it could help you. And once you install everything, you're going to submit this screenshot. So today, right now, this assignment is not so important, but you need to start working with this activity. So we have finished the lesson right now. And as a summary, guys, let me tell you that a backend is very helpful if you want to manage the logic of your application. And that application could have several clients or could have several frontends. In this case, we could have a React frontend, or we can have a mobile frontend too. That's possible. Or a simple HTML could be the frontend too. It's not a problem. Tomorrow, I will show you how to uh, use React to fetch these operations with a form or maybe with a table so you can deploy, I mean, you can render a report for the people, okay? Or for someone that is trying to access to your project. Okay, so um, this is everything. If there is any question, let me know. I can help you. But right now, please start working with this activity. So I will leave here the presentation, the slideshow. Let me know if you need any support. Remember, first you need to create the repository in GitHub, then you clone it, and then you need to do the npm init. Once you do that, you can start coding. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me know if you need um, any support, guys. I will be here to help you.